Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast, where we connect the art of jiu-jitsu with your career. Our mission is to empower and inspire you with engaging conversations and valuable insights from people just like you who benefit from the shared relationship between your workplace and the art of jiu-jitsu, leading you to a more fulfilling... Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast. It is our anniversary. Happy anniversary to the Career Jitsu Podcast, Frank.
Raise the roof. Do it. Yes.
Yeah, so it's been 1 year. It's crazy to think that it's been 1 year, huh, Frank?
We embarked on a journey 1 year ago. We navigated a lot of shoals. We've had some stormy waters, and we've seen some beautiful sunsets. And I mean, it's been quite an odyssey. It's been quite an adventure, 100%. And this is an exciting day for us to celebrate. A year of we didn't give up. We pushed through. The beginning was just ugly. Technically ugly, but this is a big shout out to all of our listeners, because if we didn't have you, the show wouldn't exist. So this is really a thank you episode to all the people who've supported us and all the comments that we get either through email, through our channel, or, you know, when I go to my classes and my kids say, I listened to your podcast, I really liked it because of this. Or we go to our gym and we train and people say, I really liked that episode about how to overcome obstacles, or, you know, the feedback has really given us the fuel to continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, the birth of jiu-jitsu started with you and I just in the dojo, like after classes, talking about jiu-jitsu and our career and like what, you know, how it has helped us. Like you said, it helped you become a better teacher. And then it just kind of took off from there. Our idea took off from there. And then we just got started. We like bit the bullet, took our risk and said, let's do this. And 1 year later, here we are.
A whole year. Yeah.
Episodes. We are now 56 episodes in, Frank. And
Crazy.
I looked at our analytics this morning and we're up to 3,169 downloads. So
that is absolutely crazy. And, you know, like looking back when we talked about it, it really sprouted up organically, because I remember I was telling you how much jiu-jitsu helped me be a better teacher, because I took something that I absolutely sucked in. I didn't have really natural gifts in. I didn't feel confident when I came in, and it put me in that student seat where some students might feel like when they come into my accounting class. And it made me realize, like, to be humble and to actually how hard you have to work to make somebody feel like they're included, that they can do this. It just opened up my eyes a lot to what it feels like to be a student. And then, like, when we're having these conversations, Jason, Andrew's talking about how it makes him a better engineer. And, you know, computer programmers are talking about how it makes them a better computer programmer. And it's really true. It's absolutely true. Jiu-jitsu makes you a better professional. And then we've had 56 guests come on in like a master class fashion and share with us their wisdom of what they've learned on the mats and how it applies to careers. And it really is like a master class. There's so much wisdom packed into those 56 episodes, and you can go back anytime and listen to them. These people are all highly successful people, and we got to tap into their brains, and what a gift for us being the hosts.
Yeah, it's something I didn't really expect when we first started, how much insight we were going to get, you know, as podcasters. And the other thing that surprised me, Frank, about our podcasting venture here is how it's so related to jiu-jitsu. There's so many parallels between podcasting and jiu-jitsu that I didn't realize. I didn't really think of until we started really doing it. And now we're a year into it and we're realizing how much, you know, we always have our guests are always talking about consistency and persistence. And then I think back,
failure.
And you know, our podcasting is very similar. We've had a lot of failures in the beginning. Remember when we first started, Frank, we bought that unit. We spent a lot of money on this device and we had
this giant mixing board, deluxe mixing board with slides. We were like two kids in a candy store. Look at this knob. Oh, you got echo, you got reverb, you can slow your voice. Remember that? You can speed up the voice. And it was black belt level stuff. And we had so many podcasts that we couldn't even post because the sound was horrible. And the funny stories, Jason, of us like take one. So Jason, for our listeners, Jason and I were like, let's just try. And we would just start talking about a podcast and go off on these ridiculous tangents that you could never publish because they were just so goofy and inappropriate. And then we listened to them and we would be on the floor rolling with laughter about how funny the content was, but how we'd be completely canceled if we had to erase it. We're like, is that erased? Is that erased?
Yeah, it
And then
reminds me.
Jason, a lesson that we learned, I'm sorry to cut you off. A lesson that we learned was we took a hit, a sunk cost. We're like, we don't care that we spent hundreds of dollars on this fancy thing. We bought a simple Yeti that had one knob on it. We hooked it into a computer. And what did we learn? We learned exactly what jiu-jitsu teaches you. Yes, the ninja rolls are fun. The flying arm bars are cool, but for God's sakes, get a Yeti and focus on the fundamentals. You have one input, one knob. Fundamentals win fights, and fundamentals give you a decent standard podcast, right?
Yeah, yeah. We were white belts trying to be black belts in podcasting. We were trying to just jump right to black belt techniques without having any fundamentals.
And we got our asses kicked. And even though right now you and I think like at the podcasting level, we have our basic purple belt, meaning we know the fundamentals, we know how to get our guests, we know how to warm them up, we know how to guide them through the podcast, we know how to wrap it up and make our guests feel comfortable and know what to do when there's an awkward moment of silence. Also know what to do when a guest gets carried off on a tangent and not, you know, to bring it back with some guardrails. We finally got to our purple belt, but we are not ready for that mixing board. We are not.
And I think the biggest thing is consistency, right, Frank? I mean, in jujitsu, that's the key to success in jujitsu is consistency. And also in podcasting, we knew that we had to be consistent, and we were. Every single week, we brought a quality episode to our listeners, you know?
And Jason, I think, and I give more credit to that to you. And it's well deserved for you because you're very organized about Frank, because my life gets crazy. I know yours does too, but I get stuck in my Ferris wheel of life. And you are always great at saying and being flexible and saying, Frank, okay, so we got a great guest. Can you do this day? If you can't, no problem. We could do this day. You made it. It was consistent, but you were also flexible. And I think you exemplified those two great qualities of being consistent and flexible. So nothing broke, everything bended in your consistent method. And so a lot of times we were tired, right? But did you not find that a lot of times you're like, oh my gosh, we have to get one out? But once we hit with our guests were so high caliber that all of a sudden you were just on the ride. You were like, holy crap, this is freaking awesome. Like it's not a job. Once we get rolling in the interview, it's no longer a job. Just like when you go to jujitsu and you're tired and you don't want to go, but you show up, you bow in, you're like, I'll just go light. But all of a sudden you're like, I'm having a ball. The same thing with consistency. You just have to show up.
Yeah.
Showing up is not half the battle. Showing up is 95% of the battle.
Yep. And that's the definition of discipline, right? Showing up even when you don't want to. You know, in jujitsu, there's times, so many times in my jujitsu life, and many of our guests have said this too, many times when they feel like they don't want to go or felt like they, have an injury or frustrated or kind of hitting plateau, but they still got on the mats and still just had that discipline to say, even though I don't have a good day, I'm not having a good day, I still got to get on the mat. And it's the same thing with podcasting, that I remember plenty of weeks, Frank, where we had guests and, we may have had like, say, an interview on a Friday afternoon and I wasn't feeling well, thinking, oh man, this is not going to be a good podcast. I'm not, negative thoughts start creeping in my head and we're not going to do this well. And then I just did it, just said, you know what? I got to be disciplined. I still got to do it, even though I'm not feeling it. And those were sometimes when I did that, those were some of our best podcast episodes.
100%. It's such an ironic thing because you go in like, I'm tired, but I have to do this for consistency purposes. Then you get our guest, and that really speaks highly to our guests. our guests brought their energy, brought their wisdom, brought their anecdotes, their stories, and they really made it a pleasure for us, right? They
Absolutely.
fired us up. And that's something I never expected. When we did this, our goal was, holy crap, we have all this wisdom. We can send it out to the jiu-jitsu community and to people who don't do jiu-jitsu. Because there's a lot of my people in my circle that don't do jujitsu, but listen to this, and it's helping them in their life. And that our purpose was not about let's us learn. It was like, let's be a conduit and get this out to our people. But I think one of the biggest benefits were every time we got off our podcast, you and I would have a couple of minutes and we'd be like, holy crap, I'm fired up. That was damn. We got the spillover benefit from our people. And
Right.
so absolutely, Jason, the consistency, I would say overall, the biggest common denominator in every successful person is their consistency. And that consistency is most manifested not by consistency of effort, by consistency of showing up. The rest follows. The rest
Mhm.
follows.
Yep. And failure too, there's been times where, I failed at something in the podcast where, I tried to use an AI tool and it was like, "Oh,
I
crap,
remember
that didn't
those.
work." And then get some feedback from a guest like, "Oh, this didn't
Right.
look good," or
Yeah, I
whatever.
remember Carolyn told
So,
us, "Hey guys, your IA, it's just all over the place. It's jumping around, it's not getting." And then we had to like take a step back and realize AI is awesome, but it still needs our guidance, right? And we
right.
learn through that failure. And sometimes guests dropped out, and sometimes, sometimes we couldn't find it. In the early days, how many times we're like, "Oh my gosh, we don't have anybody." Remember that? Oh my god, we're failing, like, we don't have the high numbers, we don't have a lot of people, like, asking to be on our show, and so we're like, we hunted in our own backyard and found great people that we know that were like, "Of course, I'll do that for you." And then all of a sudden, Jason, you started getting inundated with people from different countries saying, "I see what you're doing, I love what you're doing, I wanna be a part of what you're doing," and you got the payoff later, right? Delayed gratification is another thing that we learned from our guests. Delayed gratification is the only way to get what you want. You're never going to get instant gratification in jujitsu. Never. And you're never going to get instant gratification in podcasting. Absolutely not.
Very well said, Frank. Very well said. Okay, can we talk a little bit about our episodes and have our listeners hear kind of a overview of some of the podcasts that we had and what things that we've learned from them? I want to start with talking about how it's amazing how we became international so quickly. I didn't expect that was something I did not expect, Frank. I was like, we're going to get some guests from different areas. But then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, we had a guest from Australia. We had guests from Australia, guests from Ireland,
England,
guests from England, Greece. And we're sitting here going, wow, we thought maybe we were going to try to venture into like getting guests from,
like
other local
Boston.
academies. And then
Yeah,
it ended up being
Westboro.
global.
And that was such a shock. And it just shows the universal appeal of the subject that we're talking about. It has global appeal. And it also was kind of an honor that somebody from Ireland is like, "Oh, I love what you're doing. Like, you're in Ireland and you're listening to us." It just really was. It really gave us a boost when we needed that boost, right? When we were
Definitely.
kind of like getting a couple of stripes on our white belt, but feeling like we were plateauing, and then that happened, and also, Jason, did you notice that a lot of our guests were entrepreneurs and talked about that same thing? Like, wow, I'm plateauing, I'm not getting anybody. Then all of a sudden they get a client, then they get a big client that opens them up to other clients. And that is something that they have taught us, that progress is not a line like I'm making right now. It's not why what is it? MX I equals MX plus B, something like that, where your slope rise over the run, you go up to over one, up to over one. Every guest showed us that it's not like that. It's more of a messy up and down, and sometimes really far down, and then it shoots up and then it plateaus for a while. I think we experienced that, and I think when we got that international appeal, that kind of boosted us a great deal.
Right. And I think it gave us a lot of pressure, like good pressure, just like a lot of our guests talk about how humbling jujitsu is and how, getting on the mats for the first time, they talked about, needing to be able to handle that pressure and be able to stay composed when they're getting crushed. And
One of the
that's so related to our podcasting and entrepreneurs that have talked about how much they learned from being on the mats and how they applied it to their business, whatever it be.
And do you remember one of our guests said the most beautiful phrase, "Jiu-jitsu taught me to have grace under fire, and having grace under fire in the business world has yielded me the best results."
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
These are the
Yeah,
these are the things that some of our guests have talked about. And Jason, something you mentioned is that everyone's path is different. And almost every guest has echoed that sentiment that you got to stop looking at what other people think is success. You have to stop comparing yourself to other people. You have to be on your own journey. You in our gym have really always told us that this is your personal journey. Stop looking at that guy, give him props, give that guy props. He's doing a great job. Like, give him, you know, appreciate it, but you have to understand you are on your personal journey.
yeah.
And
My favorite quote: "Comparison is the thief of joy." It's one of my favorite sayings. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think that's something that everyone have echoed. And another thing that we have both picked up on is universally every guest has said that relationships matter, and BJJ has formed some of the best personal, athletic, and business relationships that they've ever had.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I mean, we've had corporate professionals that have said that. We've had law enforcement guests. We've had teachers. I think that particular thing that you're talking about right there, Frank, the connections and relationships, a lot of the teachers, a lot of the educators that we had talked about connecting with people, especially students, and meeting them where they're at. I think that is so important in so many different careers, not just a teacher, but every guest that we had talked about the fact that you have to connect with people first. You cannot just lay out expectations or give orders. Leaders, corporate leaders, executive professionals, they can't just give commands. They have to be able to connect with people on a different level first before they can start doing that. And I think that that's related to jujitsu too a lot. I feel like you're so much more comfortable. Think about how much more comfortable we are rolling with people that we've had a chance to roll with a lot. You just develop that
Yeah, you
that
because you
relationship and
totally
trust.
trust them. Yeah, yeah. Just like an example, I don't always do takedowns because 'cause I'm old, and the people that I trust, I'll do even if they're an animal, I'll do a takedown with them because there's that trust. And that trust builds relationships beyond the mats into the corporate world. Like, one of our guests was talking about how he took one of his jujitsu partners under his wing and helped him develop his entire business as a mentor. And that happens all the time in jujitsu. And in our when we were getting ready for this, I was telling you that I have like an unhealthy relationship with AI. I love to like just query AI and see what it says. And I did a query about what's a great way to travel anywhere in the world and plug into like a community and a family. And it gave a lot of things. But two of the top things, the top activities that it said are salsa dancing, because it's a community, it's movement, and there's time to talk between dances. And it said BJJ for the same reasons. It's a community, it's movement, it's intimate. You're like sweating on people. And then after every roll, you have those like, okay, what did you do well? What did I do well? And then oftentimes that branches out to where are you from? Where are you from? To, hey, we're all going out for drinks later. Why don't you just come with us? And I think that it said that BJJ was one of the best martial arts for that because of the nature of how it's structured with the rests, with the rolls, with the drilling so close, you can't help but get to know your partner. And so I believe that when we're talking about relationships matter, we're not only talking about the relationships in our school, but the fact that like when I went to Madrid, I could plug into that school. And immediately when I went to Madrid, the first day I rolled, all the guys were like, "Oh, you're here? Why don't you come out with us? We're going out tonight. We're getting drinks. Come out with us." That was just nice. And I already felt a connection with them. Like, I knew the ones that I connected with. That is talk about establishing relationships quickly wherever you go. If I went to Brazil, I would make relationships very fast because of my jiu-jitsu. And people really need to understand that that is one of the most beautiful gifts that jiu-jitsu gives you.
Absolutely. Yeah, resiliency. I think we had a lot of guests too that had some amazing stories, right? Where, I think in general, jujitsu builds very resilient people because of the nature of the sport. And so many of our guests talked about their jujitsu journey and how they've been able to be resilient on the mats and how that has helped them be resilient in their personal and professional lives too.
Yes. You remember the guest that we had that struggled with 5 years of vertigo, which makes you throw up. It's horrible. Then finally got back on the mats, then had a heart attack, came back on the mats, and then won a world championship.
Yes,
That
Mario, Ireland.
Yes, that interview, like, go back and look at that guy if you're ever feeling like the cards are stacked against you and having that resiliency. Jason, that's like such a big thing because discipline and consistency sometimes fail. They sometimes fail because of real things. And when they fail, what's the last thing you have to catch you? Your resiliency.
Mhm. Absolutely. We actually have 3 guests that had heart attacks and came back from training, you know?
Yes,
One of our
that's
guests
crazy.
one of our guests, which is there's gonna be we didn't release his episode yet, but I wanna talk about that real quick. So he worked for an AED company and he owned a gym and he bought an AED for his gym from the company he was working for. And literally 2 weeks after buying the AED for his gym, he himself had a heart attack. And that AED that he bought for his gym saved his life.
Saved his life.
Crazy.
That is Man, if you don't believe in fate, that's gotta shake your world, huh?
Right, right.
That is just such a fateful decision for
Yeah.
him. So that's a great one. That one's coming out. So please stay tuned for that. Also, Jason, one of the things that we picked out was that lifelong learning lives. If you notice, some of the people that we interviewed are like on top of their game. Some of them were world champions, black belts, fourth degree black belts, champions, successful businesses. And what struck me the most is none of them had an I'm there, I made it attitude. They all had the attitude of a student, did they not?
Absolutely. They have the white belt mentality. You always have to have that. I mean, we even interviewed for a brief time because he wasn't able to stay on the whole episode, but Higan Machado from California, he's a master, he's a grand master in jiu-jitsu, he's a red belt. And even I was just shocked by his humbleness too. He was like,
Yes.
I'm just here to learn and grow. And I'm like, how amazing is
Yeah.
jujitsu? And you can have somebody that's a red belt in jujitsu still saying that, you know?
And that's what got them there. They didn't abandon what got them there. And like for a guy like that who's like a god in that world to be like he's open and and really his endeavors now are like I just want to spread the love, spread the word, spread the art, make people better. It is like the best, most successful. I mean, we had some wealthy people too. And they're just so humble. They're like, yeah, I got to give back. I still have a lot to learn. When you see people at that level having that attitude, it makes you realize that you're always a student. You've never arrived. There's always another lesson to learn. And jujitsu definitely teaches you that.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So one more thing, Frank. I just did not. We skipped over this. I just didn't want to really skip over this too much. Is some of the careers that we tapped into, just very interesting careers. We learned so much from them. Our guests that had these interesting careers that you don't really hear much about, and I thought it was very enlightening to hear some of the career stories because I think that's a very good niche that we have in our podcast. Is that we are career jitsu, right? So
Yes.
we can tap into these careers that people don't hear about and they have a chance to listen about. And the one that sticks out in my mind is the lumberjack. Do you remember we had a
Yeah, I
lumberjack?
remember that lumberjack is one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. Look back to the lumberjack. You should put that I mean, all of our guests were amazing. The lumberjack just was like so different his own path, a savage beast of a human being. Like he was a lumberjack, but also savage mentality and
Yeah.
and also humble. Like it's like the trifecta, right? He's a physical beast, he's a mental beast, and he's also humble, right? And
Yeah.
that guy, the stuff that he went through and the things that he saw, it's like, holy crap, like my day's easy. My day's
Right.
easy.
Right.
You know what a hard day is. My day is easy. And that's one of the things I love about our guests. Every time a guest leaves, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to complain. If you listen to our podcast, you always end our podcast thinking, I'm not going to complain about anything. I'm going to show up and I'm going to do what I need to do to get myself to that next level.
Yeah, and that allows our listeners to take a different perspective on life. Sometimes our listeners, one of the great things that our listeners can get from our podcast is exactly that, Frank. When they're thinking their life is difficult, it's good to be able to be a listener and hear these stories where you can have that, that spark again, give you that spark again.
Right. Because if they could do it, you can do it. You remember the thoracic surgeon who said one of the best things he learned from jiu-jitsu and surgery is when he's doing a surgery and it's like, crap, it's not working. He said in his mind, he says, there's always a way out. Go back to the fundamentals and calm down, take a breath, go back to the fundamentals and truly believe and know that there's always a way out.
Hmm.
And he talks about like when you're under some giant person's mount, it sucks, but there is a way out. You need to breathe and you need to go through the fundamentals. And he said in his highest pressure surgeries, he always focuses on relax, stick to the fundamentals, and trust that there's always a way. And I thought that was like, who is under more pressure than that guy in a
Yeah,
surgery where there's a life in his hands?
right.
Not a
100.
lot of people. Maybe the guy that we interviewed who has the Purple Heart. What was his name? The Purple Heart guy?
Michael Craghelm.
Michael.
Craghelm.
That
Yes.
guy. You listen to his story.
Hmm.
He could tell you what a bad day is.
Uh-huh.
He could tell you, and what did he say? The fundamentals, relax, understand why you're there, understand what your game plan is, stick to that, stay calm, understand that there's a lot on your shoulders and you are going to survive. I mean, these people, when you hear our guests, it's hard for you to say, like, and I'm a school teacher and we have hard days, but we don't have those hard days. We have our hard days and I'm not taking anything away from it, but I don't have those hard days. So I'm never going to come home and complain ever.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yep.
Big
So I
lesson.
guess the best anniversary gift that our listeners can give to us is to go back and look at previous episodes, re-listen to them if they already listened to them, or listen to episodes that they haven't listened to already, and share them with a friend, share them with people that they know, and comment, talk about them a little bit, and just continue to be inspired by following us in our second year too, right, Greg?
Yes. Yeah. We have, like we said, Jason, we feel like we've gotten up to no stripe purple belt, which is where I actually am in jujitsu. So I can totally relate. I feel about the same way about my podcasting as my jujitsu game. There's so much for us to learn. And Jason, what are some of the things that we want to improve on or advance and evolve towards to help add value to our listeners?
Definitely, we've been trying to be a little bit funnier, adding a little bit of
Yes.
humor. I think our naturally, because of the type of podcast we are, right? We're talking about careers and jujitsu and the resiliency concept and failure and consistency, all of those important principles of jujitsu that people apply to their personal and professional life. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind too is that people like to hear humor. So we're going to try to lighten up a little bit sometimes in our podcasts and
Yes, yes. Be a little goofy. And we're gonna make those little videos, funny videos of jujitsu, like me getting tapped out in the parking lot. That got 7,000 views in like
right.
just like a week. That was pretty cool. But I had to get tapped out in a parking lot for that. I lost all my credibility. But sometimes you gotta sacrifice, take one for the team.
Yeah. The clock burner is great at that stuff. We have a few different clock burner videos too that we have out there that they can
Yes, with
just
Big Juan, who knows all my secrets now. We have to come up with some new things. And yes, we want to, looking ahead to our listeners, we want to have some events, something that we could all get together and do something like a retreat or something where we're talking about professional skills. Like, for example, I would be happy to do something. I taught corporate America, high ranking, CEOs, CFOs, buyers, how to get up in front of a group and present. I have that whole seminar.
Hmm.
They paid thousands and thousands of dollars for that. I could give that to our community and would at like a
Hmm.
professional building, like a skills building. And if our listeners are interested, let us know. That's one thing I'd like to call out to our listeners. What are you interested in? Tell us. Tell us what you want, more of what you want. Would you be interested in an event that sharpens your professional skills? And then after that, we roll,
Yeah.
right? Mind sharpening and then body sharpening. That would be really cool. Something to do that. And a networking thing. Like let's get together and do a round robin. What do you do? What clients are you looking for? I have a Facebook, I have a LinkedIn. I'm going to open that up to any of my jiu-jitsu friends, right? Because I trust you. You're in my group. So we can do things like we can do jiu-jitsu networking where I have a nice LinkedIn, you have a nice LinkedIn, and anybody needs to meet any of my people, I'm going to give you a personal introduction. So listeners, tell us what you want, tell us what you need. We want to deliver.
Yeah, and all of our guests have expressed how important community and relationships are. So the power of community is there. Like everybody understands the power of community. So doing some things like that definitely will be inspiring for everyone, our guests and our listeners. All right, Frank. So I think I would say an overview for the last year of our podcast, for this past year of our podcast, I wrote down a few things here. Consistency beats perfection. Small actions repeated weekly create extraordinary results. Success is built through relationships. Every expert starts as a beginner. Discipline outlasts motivation, and the lessons from the mats can transform your career and your life. So those are just a couple of things that
Damn.
I wrote down that are just
You
kind of a big.
basically did the tap out. You did it. That was tap out time. Jason, that was a really succinct tap out because it's every one of those you could write a book on, but every one of those theories. Something I'd like to say to our listeners that I learned, and I spoke to Andrew, who's an engineer with us. The concept of entropy, and entropy is a concept. It's a physics concept of thermodynamics, and what it really means. I'm not a it's above my head, like the physics of it, but the general concept is energy that's organized always dissipates and disperses automatically. And I love that theory because it says, like, if you have a clean room, unless you take energy to keep it that way, eventually it's going to become messy. And if you have a clean life, unless you put energy into it, it's going to naturally disperse into messiness.
Okay.
And you and I know all these concepts. We know them. I could recite them. But if you don't repeat this every day to yourself, entropy will suck it away from you. You will be less disciplined. You will be less in the mindset that you need to. You will show up less. Even if you own these concepts, entropy pulls them away from you naturally in a slow dispersion fashion, which is why doing this podcast has helped me. And for the people who already know, motivation is sugar, it burns, but discipline stays. Resilience is there when discipline fails. Even the people who know your mindset, the words that you say to yourself is what you're going to become, that showing up is 95% of it. You need to hear it every day because otherwise entropy will suck it away from you and you will become somebody who is messy and not on point. And that is what our channel does for people. It tells you what you need to hear and reminds you of the struggle and reminds you of the importance of consistency. So fight entropy, listen to our podcast and send it out. When you send it and share it, that really helps us. So please do that.
Yeah. If nothing else, listen weekly, right? Like you said, you have to have that in your mind all the time, you know? So if you're a listener and you listen to like a few podcasts, try to listen every week, because just being able to, that's our mission. Our mission is to and keep inspiring you. And even when you feel like you might lose that motivation to train, if you listen to us weekly, you'll get that new spark. Like we said, you and I, Frank, but just by interviewing these people, we keep that spark for us. So our listeners,
Yeah.
if you're listening every week, that's going to help you. It's going to help you. If you listen to a weekly podcast like ours, it's going to give you that spark every week to be like, okay, I'm going to get on the mats, because I listened to that Career Jitsu podcast and they talked about XYZ, and I'm getting on the mats tomorrow.
That's it. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. If I don't feel like it, fine. If I suck, fine. If I get crushed, fine. But I'm going to show up. And when I leave, I'll know that I showed up, and I can check that box of consistency, because you are your habits. You're not your results. You're your habits. And this podcast will help you stick to those habits, because it helps me and it helps you. And tell us, listeners, if you're finding that this is helping you stick to your habits and show up. Dead on.
Dead
Then
on,
on
Frank.
1 year. Let's go.
Wow.
1 year.
Crazy.
This is just the
Yeah.
beginning. This is just the beginning.
Yeah. I'm excited for what's to come.
Me too, Jason. Me too. And thank you so much for our listeners. You are the reason we do this. And to our sponsors, don't forget 9 Lives has been a great sponsor for us. And we really appreciate that. So
Yeah, and we're accepting other sponsorships too. Anybody who wants to reach out, becoming a part of our mission, we're looking at, partnering up. We're looking at collaborations with people. We're looking to get more sponsorships so that we can keep delivering this valuable content to our guests.
Yes, other podcasters, if you like ours, we'd love to do we'll come on your show, you come on our show. Let's do it.
Yes, definitely.
All right, Jason. Congratulations, Jason.
Congratulations. Happy anniversary, Frank.
Happy anniversary. Here comes a big hug. Bam. Hope you got it. It has been a great journey, and I look forward to what comes next.
Awesome.
Peace.
Thanks, Frank. All right. Have a great day, Frank.
Peace out. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the powerful connections we've explored between the art of jiu-jitsu and your career. In your workplace and in jiu-jitsu, you learn to adapt and navigate challenges. So remember that persistence and the courage to embrace the lessons that you learn are the keys to your growth both on the mat and in your career.